Welcome to I'm Not Joking, the podcast where a behavioral scientist examines what it's like to live a humorous life. Glimpse into the lives of the funniest people in entertainment, business, and science as your host, Dr. Peter McGraw, explores their habits, motivations, and secrets to success. Get ready to fire up your brain and your funny bone. Now, here's your host.
Welcome to I'm Not Joking, the podcast that looks at the lives of funny people. I'm Peter McGraw. Today's guest is Alonzo Bodden. The winner of Season 3 of NBC's Last Comic Standing, Alonzo is a regular on NPR's Wait, Don't Tell Me and Comedy Congress. He is also a panelist on the game show network's Mind of a Man. Alonzo is among my favorite people in comedy, in part because he's quick to say yes, such as when I asked him to critique one of my academic papers on humor, when I asked him to appear on my comedy game show Funny or True, or his willingness to tape a podcast in the green room of a comedy club as we are doing now. Welcome, Alonzo.
Thank you. This is probably the best place to do a podcast. A green room is probably the most like home for me. And, you know, of those credits you read, Mind of a Man is the most disappointing thing that I've done, because that was a great show and it didn't get picked up. I am the king of one season, Peter. I've done one season of a lot of shows. Never make season 2. That one I thought I was going to get a season 2.
So why do you think that didn't happen?
I don't know. It might be ratings, but like Game Show Network isn't a ratings network like NBC or CBS or even, you know, FX or something like that. You know what I mean? So I don't know how it didn't get picked up, because they reran it for a long time, and a lot of people would come up to me, man, we love Mind of a Man. Like, where are there more shows? And it was like, oh, well, you know.
You know, I sort of feel like...
Thank you. What you're hearing is the wait staff of a comedy club.
So we're backstage at Flappers, and why is it called Flappers?
Because they have this theme of the women from the 20s with those dresses that were Flappers dresses. Barbara, the owner, I don't know why she chose that as her theme, but, you know, Flappers, jokers, chuckle hut, laughs. It's all the same.
Yeah. You know, it's sort of a shame you weren't born British.
Yeah.
Because these sort of talk shows. By the way, I'm already off script.
No, fine.
This shows you how comfortable we are together. But we need to get you on.
They call them panel shows.
Panel shows.
That's what they call them in the UK. And yeah, I'm great on panel show. My talent is unscripted, right? So there's scripted, you know, sitcom actors, movies, stuff like that. And I'm not good at that, because that's where all the money is. And God forbid I made millions doing that shit. Oh no.
Thousands. You can make thousands.
Yeah, I make tens. But panel shows I'm really good at. And it's funny you mentioned the UK, because Jimmy Carr, who you know, one of the great comics internationally, one of the great comics, not so well known in the US. But
he's appeared on this podcast.
A phenomenal guy. And he said something to me. He was trying to get me on a show he did on Netflix. Netflix didn't want me because I wasn't a big enough name. But he said, we were in Montreal, he said, man, you are like the best value in comedy. Like, you're the greatest comic for the lowest price. I'm like, Jimmy, I'm not sure if that's a compliment. I don't know if I feel good about being a great value. No, but I know what he meant, and it is what it is.
Yeah, I actually have a note here that I feel like you're funnier off the cuff.
Oh, yeah.
Than your jokes.
Yeah, at times. I mean, I can write great material, but people are more impressed when you do it in the moment than if you did it before. And my favorite jokes, I won't lie to you, if it's something that I say that's funny in that moment, that will never be funny again, because it was just like the right line for that moment, that situation, and it killed. But you can't duplicate that situation, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the tough part about doing it that way. Like Todd Barry did a whole tour of crowd work.
Okay.
And I was like, damn, you could do that? Like, I could do that easily. No disrespect to Todd Barry. I love Todd. Todd's great. But I was like, damn, I could do that. But one of the greatest times in comedy, and you know all about this, we all talk about it, about Dublin's back in the day when we were all coming up. That was my thing. Dublin's was this bar that was like a workout room for pro comics, and it was at the time when Dane Cook was becoming super famous. And we had a bunch of people there who've gone on to be really famous. Ken Jeong, Bobby Lee, Craig Robinson, Sebastian, and so on. And I would be there every week, and I would just make up shit. Like, I would ask waitresses, like, hey, what can I make funny? You know, and I love that challenge. So,
you know, it's interesting you talk about this crowd work thing. I didn't know that Todd Barry had done that. I once, a long time ago, it might have even before I got serious about studying humor, I went to the Comedy Magic.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Comedy Magic Club. Yeah, it's in Hermosa.
In Hermosa Beach. You know, like, is it on a Sunday? When Leno would be there? That's
Sunday night when Jay's there, yeah.
There was this older gentleman, I mean, he must have been in his 60s, and he just kind of very
Jimmy Brogan.
Slow, methodical.
It's Jimmy Brogan.
And he did his whole set.
That's what he did, yeah.
Yeah,
that's
right.
Brogan's thing, and he was Jay's head writer for a long time.
Oh, yes.
And yeah, Brogan he just asks the crowd, and he does it, he's very nice about it.
He is.
And it's funny you mention old man, because at times it is like your grandfather joking with you. Like your grandfather's asking you what's going on and making fun of your stupid answers to his questions.
Yeah, but he was always sort of, I'm amazed I even remember this. I think I remember it because it was so unusual. Because he would just sort of, he was like, oh, that's very interesting. And then he kind of made you feel okay about saying whatever you said, and then he would make jokes about it.
Right. Well, the thing with crowd work is, the reason it works is most people don't listen, right? In a conversation, most people are just waiting for their turn to talk. See, so when you're the comic and you listen, and then all you're doing is saying what they said, and then they realize how ridiculous it sounds coming from another person.
So the first step in crowd work is just being able to repeat back more or less exactly what they just said.
Right, right. You repeat what they say, and then you add to it, you add a twist to it, or you do a what if. You know, it's like the old joke, you know, you ask somebody, what do they do? Nothing. How do you know when you're done?
Right.
You know, and they're like, yeah, I never thought of that. Right. It's like, I know you didn't, because you're an idiot. So,
well, I always start with the same question. We're getting to a little late, but it's not a problem. Alonzo, if you weren't working as a comedian, what would you be doing?
I would probably still be in the aerospace business. That was the business I left to do stand-up. At that time, I was training new mechanics. So I would probably be doing something in the aerospace business, mechanic or engineer. I fooled them into thinking I was an engineer. I never went to college. I didn't get an engineering degree, but they started calling me an engineer, and I was like, well, I ain't going to argue with you.
Right.
So, yeah, that's probably what I would be doing.
Do you miss that at all?
Not a bit. Okay. Not a bit. I have a lot of friends who are still in it. One of my friends was very successful. He ended up at one point being the highest ranked black employee at Lockheed, like high-level executive. I mean, he went to school, continued in school from our start, and blah, blah. So I would have had a friend with a lot of juice, so I would have had a good job. It's my boy. My boy was running the plant. It was like, yeah, I'd have had something.
Okay, so you don't miss it, but what did you like about it? Because, well, you know, when you did Funny or True, I asked a similar question of the panel, which was, if you were going to be an academic, what type of academic would you be? And you said physicist.
Yeah.
Because, you know, connected to this.
I like how things work. Mm-hmm. So that's probably part of it. The thing I loved in aerospace was the technology. Mm-hmm. You know, the technology is very cool. And a therapist, and I've seen a few, told me that I like machines better than people because I know how they're supposed to work. Mm-hmm. And if they don't work, I can fix it and make it work again. The mechanical world is very definite. Humans are a real problem. They're great in a group. I call them the crowd, but one-on-one, not so much.
And you're big into motorcycles.
Love bikes. Absolutely love them.
How'd you get over here?
I rode.
I rode tonight.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So how is that in L.A.? That seems to be...
It's like a giant game of Frogger. If you're familiar with if you remember the video game Frogger, young kids, millennials listening to this, Google it. You'll find out what it is.
It feels that way.
But that is exactly what LA is. It's like a game of Frogger. It is me versus them, street fighting. You have to have your head on a swivel. You have to be alert. but I can get from point A to point B much faster. It's also fun. It's just fun. Riding is an escape. I think of some of the best bits when I'm on my bike.
Is that right?
Yeah. It's meditative. It's like when I do the rides, when I get in the canyons and get away from town. You know, L.A., like I can ride 20 minutes from my house and not know L.A. exists. So those are the rides that really clear my head. But yeah, it's even battling traffic. Like I was told I'm not allowed to kick car mirrors because I want to kick their mirrors because they don't use them. And I'm like, if you're not using it, why is it sticking out of the side of your car, right?
Because who told you that you can't do
this?
They
just change lanes. Well, an interested party, shall we say. An interested party. But yeah, I'm like, well, you're not using it. Why can't I just kick it? You know?
Right.
I've had people change lanes into my leg. Like they're right next to you and they just start. Like, if somebody hits the bike, that could knock it down. But if they just push against it, it's just like pressure. And I've had them changing, and I hit the car, and it's like, if you changing lanes, look next to you.
Yeah.
Those of you listening, if you're changing lanes, look next to you. I know it's a different concept.
Do you work on your own bikes?
No, not really. Okay. Technology in cars and motorcycles has gone way beyond the work on it in your garage. You can change oil, right? But unless you're an asshole, you got to take the oil to an oil recycling place and blah, blah, blah. If you're an asshole, you just pour it down the sewer,
right?
Which we did back when we didn't know any better, But so the effort of doing that, right? So you get now you got 5 quarts of oil in this thing that you hope doesn't leak when you put it in your car to take it to it. It's like, no, I'll just pay the guy to do it. But technology-wise, everything now runs off an ECU, microprocessors. And like I say now, when you open, like, if you have a new car, I had first notice this on a BMW. I opened the hood, and there's a cover over the engine. And I said they should, on the top of it, they should just write, none of your business.
Yeah, that's right.
None of your business. This is not your grandfather's car. There's no carburetor here for your screwdriver. Just bring it to us.
Yes.
Which I'm fine with, because the trade-off with that is cars are so much more reliable. I mean, you were in the same age group. Remember tune-ups? Yeah. Remember you used to have to get a tune-up every 30,000 miles, and you had to change the oil. All that. Like cars were. They were great, but it was kind of a pain in the ass. Now you just drive the shit, and it tells you, I need service.
Yes. Yeah, it's pretty good. So you were saying on your way over here, well, you said you fell asleep.
Yeah.
So you took a little nap today. You're working a lot these days.
Working a ton. This goes back a few months. So in September, a guy named Brian Volkweiss, who's a great producer, he approached me about doing another 1 hour, doing a 1 hour special. And I had just recorded a CD in February. I didn't have a new hour in September. Now, in retrospect, I could have done material from the CD and the special, but I always like to do something new. So I had about 30 minutes. I had to create another 30. And I said, do I want this challenge? Can I write 30 new minutes by December 1st when we were recording? Okay. I said, I knew I could do it. But
so in 3 months.
My question to myself was, do I want to work this hard? So I did. And so I had to get up. I was on the road every weekend from the last week of September to December 2nd. And in between, I was doing spots in town. Like I was on stage all the time.
This is sort of old school for you.
Yeah, just writing, testing it, changing the order, writing it again. Does this joke work? Is this joke going to work? Can I make this other? I did a couple of jokes from the CD because it was like, oh, I can make that new and more relevant and blah, 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 blah. And I did it. And then I looked up so I thought, oh, it's done. I can exhale. But what I didn't realize, because I'm usually booking stuff way in advance, I had booked all of December. I only had 4 days off the whole month of December. So I was just exhausted. By New Year's, I was like just gone. I was sick. And I've never been that way. But I was like, man, I'm making money. The money's good, but I'm just too tired. Mm-hmm. So today, and this happens a lot as a comic, you switch time zones too much. Your body doesn't know when to wake up. So I'm wide awake at 5, 6 in the morning. So I went to the gym, and then I had some errands and did some shit during the day. And then I looked up, it was like 4 o'clock. I was like, oh, I'll catch a nap before the show. And then I woke up, I woke up 10 minutes before we were supposed to meet.
Right. Yeah, that's right. So now I want to ask you about your days. So are you not naturally an early riser?
Yeah, I am, but not that early.
Okay.
I usually wake up between 8 and 9.
Okay. Which is for a comic, that's early.
Yeah, well, I don't drink.
Yes, that's right.
See, so
that helps.
I ain't chasing women anymore. They're fast, Peter. You can't chase them. Early in my career, I would catch them. Now I'm like, something? What am I going to do with it if I do catch it? I'll let it go.
So you're up 8-9, but when you're performing, so tonight you've got 2 sets, one at like 8:30ish and another at 9:30ish.
No, 10. 8 shows were 8 and 10, so I should be done by about midnight.
Okay. So that's a different type of day than I have. I'm up early and I'm doing my hardest work usually in the morning. If I'm teaching, I might be doing it in the morning and in the afternoon. But usually, I'm not doing much work after 9 o'clock at night. Like, I'm just not at my best. If I've taken care of business, there's no reason for me to be doing that. And so I can kind of wind down. But you, in 30 minutes and an hour, are going to be full on.
Right. Well, I usually crash sometime during the day. Okay. I usually, somewhere between 2 and 4, I'm going to shut it down for, maybe a half hour, maybe an hour, something like that. But as a comic, I can turn it on. Most of us can turn it on when we have to. So
even if you're wiped out.
No matter how tired you are, when you hit the stage, boom, you're on, and you got the energy to do that 45 or an hour or whatever. And then you like when you're sick, right. When you're sick. I did a show in Pakistan. Pakistan was coming out of both ends of me. Okay. All right, they had buckets on both ends of the stage in case I had to throw up during my set. I mean, I was sick as they said. The promoter said that I still hold the record for sickest guy to go on stage. Right. But in the 45, I did not get sick. I joked about it, but I did not get sick because as a comic, you train yourself. Like when you got to work. I used to watch the old guys, like you watch Don Rickles, toward the end, Rickles was in a wheelchair, and they wheeled him out on stage. But when the lights went on, the brain went on, and he was able to do his thing. So I'm not that old yet, but that's how it works. My day kind of breaks up. Okay. There's daytime, you do all your daytime crap, your errands, your this, that. Sometimes you're writing, doing radio shows, interviews, whatever it might be during the day. Then you downshift for a minute, and then at night, you go to work.
I see. So when you were basically in a sprint to get this special done.
Yes.
And so there you're doing a lot more writing.
Yeah.
And what does that look like? Where are you doing it? How are you doing
I do it on my phone. I write a lot in the Notes app.
Okay.
Because I can pull things out of that and switch them around and move them. It's easy. And I still write in a notebook sometimes because writing in the notebook imprints it in my brain.
Yeah, I think that's
physically writing it down. So it looks like, oh, there's an idea. Oh, that idea is a joke. Oh, that joke connects to this joke. Or, oh, that joke doesn't work. Or now how am I going to do the whole thing? And then I developed kind of a theme in the whole thing between shifting between heavyweight material like news, topical stuff, and then lightweight material like yoga pants or iPhones. And I would joke about it like heavyweight, lightweight, and then the crowds would pick up on it, and they would laugh when I switched. So it became a thing of I would just say the topic, and they knew I was switching, which was kind of fun. So I developed that in the couple of months leading up to the special.
Was that a new technique?
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
That's fun. How'd you feel about the...
Good. I feel better about this one. I shouldn't say this publicly, but it's true, than the one I did before this.
Okay.
The reason being I had more prep time on stage. The other one, I had been on tour in Canada, and there was some of the material I knew wouldn't work in Canada, and I came home and I recorded without getting to run. I'd love to run a set at least 5 times before I record it. Like, that's if I know the set. Just to be comfortable saying it. There's just something about doing it, the repetition and comfort, and new things come out. Like whenever a comic leaves a stage, it's always, man, I should have said this.
Yeah,
you know that. So,
I have the same thing when I give talks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you do an hour of material, how do you, this is going to sound weird, but how do you memorize it? Like,
I'm trained to. Just over the years, I've learned to do that. I memorize stuff pretty quick. It's just repetition. I'm just trained to do that. My brain knows how to do that. You don't have
a special technique?
No. I used to repeat it over and over. Sometimes I'll still do that, but generally my brain picks up on it. And the difficult thing is to say it the same way twice, which I usually don't. But that's good because I don't want to give a recital.
You know, when we were working on the humor code, I remember the two of us talking, and you were talking about how the way that you want to do a joke is that it feels to the audience like you just came up with it at the moment.
Yeah.
While you're on stage, it feels like it just popped into your head at the moment. And so my guess is that the fact that it doesn't always come out the same way probably helps a little with that.
Oh, definitely. Well, Robin Williams was the greatest ever at that, right? People thought, wow, Robin thought of every... No, Robin didn't think up that whole hour right there. But he was so good at making it appear that he did because of his manic energy and stuff. Now, some of it he did think up in the moment. Some of it he stole from other comics. That's another podcast. Peter will go into that. But he was the best at it. Roy Wood Jr., who's a great comic and a friend of mine from The Daily Show, we were talking about this just this week, and Roy said his thing, he's been asking the employees, the staff at comedy clubs, how often does this person change their material? How often does that person change their material? A lot of comics don't change their material, and it blows our mind when you can see a guy and you see him again 5 years later, and he's doing the same hour, and you're like, what? Like, and then my thing is, how does a new joke crack the rotation? You've been doing this for 9 years. How does a new 2 minutes get in? I don't know. I don't know how they do that. It works for some of them, you know. But it only works
to a certain degree, right?
Yeah. Well, what it does, it kills the business. See, Roy's thing is like, if I'm a paying customer and I come see you, and then I come see you again the next year, and you're doing the same hour, I'm not coming to see you again.
No, that's right.
And that hurts the business because the fan, the consumer, thinks, oh, every comic does that. So they're like, well, why would I go see him again? They do the same act. And then there are those of us who don't do the same act, you know, and hopefully people learn that.
Yeah, I think it's, well, so in marketing we call this customer lifetime value. Is that
it sounds right. That's what I meant. That's what I meant to say.
You're trying to create you can't create customer lifetime value. Look, you can do that if it's Starbucks and you're selling people pumpkin spice lattes over and over again. They'll drink those every day, but no one wants to hear the same joke twice.
Right, unless you've written Hamilton. Right, where people are like, yeah, I'll go see that again.
Yes. Well, music is different than jokes.
Yeah, music, it's absolutely different.
Music gets better with repetition, at least until some point, and then you're sick of it. Okay, so you're super busy right now. What are you saying no to? Are you saying no to anything?
Yeah, I am. I always try to get a little more time home. So we're doing, when I say we, I mean me and my agent. 1 weekend a month, I'm just taking off. Okay. I told them we're not booking July unless it's something really good. Okay. You know, it's hard, man, because I love working. It's what I do. It's my whole life. I'm not married. I don't have any kids. I'm married to this shit. You know, this is it. So it's hard to say no. But like this weekend is a perfect example. It's a crappy weekend to work because it's the weekend after New Year's. Everyone just finished the holidays. They're not going out. Like it's hard to get them. You know, if you're a big name and you draw, it's great. But I'm not that. I wish I was. I wish I was better at marketing, what you talk about. That's always been my weak spot. But I'd have been better, no disrespect to the club, but I'd have been better off taking this weekend off.
To just rejuvenate.
You know, rejuvenate, go to the Laugh Factory, do a 20-minute spot that I have no pressure.
I see.
You know, I'm not selling the ticket.
Right.
Yeah. That would have been easier.
I wanted to ask you about that. So, do you consider yourself a bachelor? You said you're not married.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to use the old term, yeah, I'm a single guy. I didn't commit to being single. I committed to being a comic.
Okay.
So in my 30s, which is when most people I think get married, I started doing this at 30, right? And I was, you know,
it's a
making
late start.
$50. Yeah, it's a very late start. You know, it's okay. It is what it is. But you're making $50 a spot. Marriage isn't a high priority.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, and then when it starts happening, I'm traveling so much. And, you know, when I did Last Comic Standing, things got ridiculously busy. And my girl at the time, who was a fantastic woman, tall, striking, beautiful, smart, she was like, can I get a surrogate boyfriend so I can go out on weekends?
Right.
You know, you can't ask her to do that. Some women could. So it is what it is. On the whole, I have no regrets. Yeah, although now I'm an old guy, right? Young comics always ask me advice, this or that. And one of the things I tell them, if you can get something real, relationship, child, whatever, do it. Because this shit ain't real, right? This shit doesn't last in the same way. I love it, don't get me wrong, but it's not like having a wife or a kid or, you know, whatever.
Yeah, well, I think the interesting thing about comedy is that it's not like music, right? So, the Rolling Stones can still go out and play Sympathy for the Devil.
Absolutely.
Like they can still go out and have the magic and the excitement of being on stage, and then they can also, go back home and have families to do whatever they want. The comedy thing is more of a grind.
Yeah, it is.
Because for the reason we just were talking about, like, I guess you could choose to be that person who's doing the same set for 5 straight years, but they're not going anywhere. And I can't imagine that they find the work meaningful. That's like factory work.
Right. But
what you're doing is like you're an artist. Like you're constantly challenging yourself.
Yeah, the creativity is the joy.
The charts.
That's what the work is. For me, that's my favorite part is the creativity. Yeah, well, it's a matter of finding somebody who gets that, right? And if you're lucky enough to find a woman or a man, or if you're a woman or whatever, nowadays today you got to just go through 15 categories of what. If you find a really sympathetic donkey who understands what you're going through, God bless.
Yeah.
Okay. No, but it takes that person to understand that's that, right? Early on, when I first started, this girl told me, and she turned out she was prophetic, and she said, any woman in your life is going to be a mistress. Comedy's your wife.
Yeah.
And this was in my first 2 years. She saw that. She was like, yeah, this is it. And she's right. That's the way it is. But some women get that, and then others don't. And it's a weird life, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Well, I'm a bachelor also, and so I kind of like the term.
Yeah.
It's descriptive.
Right.
It's it's also it provokes. That term has. People react to it, I think. But I think that the fact is that everywhere else in the world, there's variety. So some people like to go to the mountains for vacation, and some like to go to the beach. And some people like Indian food, and some people like Italian food. Some people do blue-collar work, and some people do white-collar work. So then the idea that everybody's supposed to get married and give parenthood a try, that can't be one size fits all.
Well, you know who doesn't like the term bachelor? Women.
Okay.
Because if a woman, I'm in my 50s, never been married. If a woman isn't married by 35, she's a failure. That they you know what I mean? Like there's no positive term for a woman who never got married.
And the term is spinster.
Right.
And it's just a terrible term. I mean the connection. The
right. There's always what's wrong with you? What didn't you? Don't you? And women who don't have kids, other women, like women are so mean to women anyway, right? I don't know. It's almost funny to watch, but like they get attacked by other women for not having kids. How could you? You don't know what motherhood is? You're so selfish. You're blah 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 blah. It's like The Handmaid's Tale, right? Yeah. Like. You have a womb and you didn't use it? How dare you?
Yeah,
how dare you live your life,
Yeah, I think that's right. But
the other thing is, how many people get married because they're supposed to get married? So now they're cheating on their spouse.
Yeah.
They're like athletes are always the funny ones. Like athletes get married younger than society does. And it's the most ridiculous thing. It's like, oh, so you're a single male, you're a man in your 20s, with millions of dollars, you're famous, this and that, and you're going to pretend you're going to be faithful to one woman, where women are literally throwing themselves at you, right? It's like Eddie Murphy's old joke, pussy for you, here's a pussy for you, here's a pussy for you, you're a power forward in the NBA, here's a pussy for you, and just be, oh, no thanks, no, and then you have the ones, the worst ones, who are abusive because they don't know how to relate to people outside of, or there was never a negative consequence in their life.
Right. There's never was a boundary.
Right. So we could go into but marriage isn't for everybody, but some people do it. I have a friend, he did that, and he said, man, never marry someone because you're supposed to. He was like, that shit cost me a house.
Yeah. It's a tough road to walk if you don't have a good partner, or if you're doing it for the wrong reasons.
I got a friend, a comic friend, and he's going through a crappy divorce right now. And he found out, like, his wife's been having affairs for years. Because he's working, he's on the road, he's traveling, this and that. She traveled some, too. But, he's found out she was, like, screwing around on him all the time. And she's telling him about this now to kind of twist the knife, you know.
Painful. Well, thank you for all the extra jokes that you've been able to write as a Bachelor. Alonzo, I appreciate it. I wanted to ask you this question. I've never asked anyone this question before. I've heard this, I don't know, I couldn't tell you where I've heard this, but just from talking to comics about this idea of don't pander to the audience. This idea of,
right.
Of like, you can't be too concerned about what the audience is going to
exactly.
think. Is that so? Tell me about that. Tell me a little bit about
that. Well, now it's worse than ever,
okay.
Right? Because audiences have become so sensitive to what, you know, I'm gonna talk about it in my set tonight, but audiences have become so sensitive to what comics say. But coming up, so when you start out, you just want to make them laugh.
Sure.
And you'll do whatever to be funny. Me and Kathleen joke about it. You just monkey it up, right? You jump around on stage and you do. And to me, you go through stages, right? So you go through your bodily function stage, right? And then you go through your, fat girl. Like for guys, it's I dated a fat girl. For women comics, it's I dated a homeless guy.
Okay.
You go through that phase of that kind of bullshit. And then you start finding out who you are and you start talking about what you want to talk about. And then you hopefully develop the confidence to keep doing that, and they come to you. You know what I mean? I learned that watching guys like Harlan Williams, who's totally out there, but he's naturally just a character as a person.
Okay.
And I saw people wouldn't laugh because they didn't understand who he was, but then once they did, he's the funniest one in the world because there's only one Harlan Williams. Maria Bamford, same way. Maria, great. It was just, what are these weird sounds coming out of this skinny person?
I know.
You know?
I've never seen anything quite like that.
Then her following is tremendous because there's only one of her. Mm-hmm. Now we have a thing. You're not supposed to make fun of this group, and you're not supposed to say that word, and this and that. And it changes, but you can't pander to that because you never know what that audience is. You know, in other words, I've been on stage, and you see a bunch of just guys that are supposed to be Trump guys. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? That middle-aged, slightly overweight factory worker Midwest mentality, and they hate Trump, and they're as liberal as you can imagine, and they want change in the world, and they're not at all prejudiced, this and that. Then sometimes you get this young crowd, and they're so PC, you can't tell a joke in front of them because they're thinking, oh, well, what about the fill in the blank? Mm-hmm. That's going to be hurt by that joke, right? So you'd go nowhere because you'd have to do a poll before every show,
right.
Or you'd have to do the most innocuous comedy that means nothing. It's like working on cruises all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where
you've done some cruises, right?
Yeah, I do a different thing. I do a charter cruise where I can do my own show.
I see.
But when you're that cruise comic that they throw you on stage and the audience is from 5-year-old kids to grandmothers, you know, you got to find something funny about a doorknob. Right. You know what I mean? And God bless them, the people who do it. Some are great at it, and for others, it's just work. But I'm saying from a creative standpoint, that's a whole different thing that I would never want to have to do. Mm-hmm. And the people who are the most controversial quite often get the most recognition. You know, we're going through that right now with Louis C.K.
Yes.
You know, people are all mad at Louis. Louis was on the list. Louis made $47 million last year. Somebody's listening. Yes. I mean, a lot of that was movie and TV money for stuff that never got released. But, yeah, you could be, you know, Dice. People hated Dice.
Yeah, Dice is a nice example of
They hated Dice, and then Dice became the biggest comic in the world.
You know, I actually teach this idea when it comes to brands more generally, which is like you either want to serve hot tea or iced tea. And, you know, if you serve hot tea, you're going to, you know, some people are going to they don't want hot tea. They want iced tea. But if you serve warm tea to try to make everybody happy, then no one ends up being happy.
Perfect analogy. Yeah. Yeah, I try not to serve warm tea.
No, you don't.
Try not to.
So, do you have you don't have to name names, but do you have a rival or like a frenemy or an enemy?
No, there's only one guy in the business I don't like. I just don't like him.
Okay.
We just don't get along. He did something. I'll tell a story. I don't give a shit if he's mad. It's Orny Adams. We were on a tour. We were doing publicity. This was at the time of Rob, whatever, the mayor of Toronto, who was on cocaine and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So anyway, when Just for Laughs put together tours, they have different comics, and we each have a style. that particular tour, I'm the guy who did topical, you know, and that's what I do. And we all know it. And I'm not saying they can't do it, but it's my lane. So I had jokes about this
Rob Ford
doing cocaine. This was in the 2000s. I'm like, who does cocaine? What, you got a time machine? Where do you find cocaine? And I talked about, how do you do cocaine and stay fat? Blah, blah, blah. And we were doing this publicity, this TV thing, and Orny did that. Orny did, how do you get cocaine in today's market? How do you stay fat on cocaine? And I'm sitting there, and now I got nothing to say on this show, and I was livid, man. I wanted to beat the hell out of him. I'd never been that angry, and everyone knew it. They were like, holy shit, like Alonzo's losing, you know.
I've never seen you mad.
Yeah, that was, well, don't mess with what I do. That's my art. That's what I do. Yeah, so it was and to this day, I won't talk with him. I don't want to work with him. We don't get booked together, you know. He is who he is, but that's the worst thing you could do to me. The worst thing you can do in my world is steal my art, especially in front of me.
Yeah, it's an amazing story.
Yeah. So.
You know, I asked that question because I think, you know, in academia, I think in anywhere there's a competitive world, there's the potential for this idea of like a rival, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or someone who pushes you, or, you know, they're a little ahead.
Well, one of the things you learn over time is it's not competitive. Okay, so there are other comics, you have levels, but like me and Bobby Kelly, who I love. I love Bobby. We kind of do the same thing. Like, we were talking about this, like, we're the solid guys that they know, right? They got to book somebody, they know it. Like, with Just for Laughs, they're like, yeah, you can call Alonzo or Bobby. They got a gala set in their back pocket at all times, right? And we're respected. We're not super famous. Is he more famous than me? Yes, in the social media world, but there might be other worlds where I'm more known or whatever. We both do well.
Those East Coast liberals, they know you, Alonzo.
We both do well, but neither one of us is that super famous millionaire guy, but we have friends. But we're not, so it's not competitive, but we love the fact that we can share stories. Me and John Heffron, we went up against each other. Like, there was a time of comedy competitions, right? And he reminded me, we went up against each other on Star Search.
Is that right?
You know, yeah, and
wow.
I beat him on Star Search. Then on Last Comic, we were just going up against each other over and over, you know, that he won season 2, I won season 3. And after that, we agreed we will never compete on anything. We laugh about it because it's what we went through, you know, because comedy competitions, I'm always good at those because I'm a setup punch guy. So I can be really funny in 1 minute because my act is something I can pull a minute out. Whereas if you're a storyteller, doing a minute's hard, or 3 minutes or whatever. And I learned how to do that because that got me on TV. You know what I mean? So it didn't, I wasn't walking around saying, oh, I'm a better comic than you. It's like, no, I really know how to do this. But I knew I was good. But anyway, it's a different kind of competitiveness. Frenemy is a great word because it's a friendly competitiveness. We love each other. But if me and Bobby are on the same show, he's going to kill his way, I'm going to kill my way, and then we're going to fuck with each other after the show. I got a bunch of Mexican comic friends. Man, we used to go at it, you know, black versus Mexican coming up and do joke, follow each other. If I follow Johnny Sanchez, I'm making fun of Mexicans. If he follows me, he's making fun of black people.
Okay.
We love each other, and that's what we do.
You know, I think this notion of friendly competition can be useful. You know what I mean? Like, and you know, we know in sports it exists.
Yeah.
Clearly. In science, I think, I don't know, I think a lot of times scientists are too often a little too thin-skinned.
Yeah, maybe.
To really embrace it in that. It's a little too threatening, perhaps. I don't know. It's just something I've been kind of puzzling over in terms of thinking about how much does that stuff naturally happen? How much does it actually help elevate your game? Like, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, it pushes you. In comedy, it definitely pushes you.
Yeah.
Because if you're on a show with 4 or 5 comics and they're all great, then you want to be great too. You know, one of the things in comedy that this happens for me is I'm on a show and I'm the only one not famous. And I'm the only one not rich. But I'm on that show and I got mine. I remember I did one show. It was like 5 of us and I closed and I said, I'm closing for millionaires and TV stars. What did I do wrong? Why am I the one? You know what I mean? Dom Herrera told me a story once, and Dom is the sweetest guy. He's a great guy, but Dom's a beast. You know, they don't poke the bear. And he was working, it was some Hollywood thing, and there were two famous comics on the show, and one of them was talking shit about Dom. And he went up, and he buried them.
Is that right?
He killed it. He like, because, you know, he turned it up. Like, we could do that. Sometimes you got to turn it. And Dom said, yeah. I was like, yeah, you're going to follow me? Good luck. And
Right.
Dom went to that place that, you know, and that he has, you know. And I've done that. I had that happen once with a comic. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm just going to destroy this crowd and leave. And I was outside. It happened at the Comedy Magic Club. And I won't say Orny Adams' name, but I just waited outside long enough to hear them not laugh, and then I rode off.
I see.
Like,
On your motorcycle.
Yeah, I got mine.
Hey, I know you have to perform soon, so I want to ask you one last question and then thank you and let you go. What are you reading, watching, or listening to that's really good these days?
It's funny I mentioned The Handmaid's Tale.
Okay.
I finally watched that, and it was really good. And what I'm noticing with these stories of the future is there's nothing good. There's just different ways we go bad.
Okay.
You know, whether it be apocalyptic or society turns or whatever. So I really enjoyed that. I'm reading a book called Washington Black, and it's about a kid who was born a slave. His slave master's brother had this idea of building a balloon, like a hot air balloon, and he needed a ward, a trainee, a kid. He needed a slave boy to help him. He gets this kid, Washington Black, to help him, and he takes this kid to freedom, and he teaches this kid how to read and some stuff about science. And the kid is becoming his own person, kind of a science brain in Canada, in the northern wilds of Canada, where this guy took him and this guy disappeared, and the kid was on his own. But he's still black in the 1800s, so he still has to deal with everything about slavery. It's a really good book, so I'm enjoying that. I got Michelle Obama's book next on my reading list. I have to read that. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is one of the best movies I saw this year.
Is that right? You know, I don't follow the Marvel stuff too much, but I saw a bunch of stuff on Twitter.
Spider-Man
people loving it.
He's a black and Puerto Rican kid in Brooklyn. It's like the coolest, and they do it real. His parents, you know, they make it real, and it really works. It's one of those, you don't have to be a superhero movie or an animated movie. It's just a really good movie. It's a good story. So I really enjoyed that one. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm reading. That's what I'm watching. It's funny you mentioned Marvel. This guy told me to get into Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I'm trying. I can't. Ray Donovan, I just finished that season. Yeah, those and what's that movie? Bird Box.
Oh yeah, the Netflix one.
Yeah. So I just watched that.
And what'd you think?
It was great. It was like edge of your seat. But then when you sit back and think about it, it's like, no, this didn't make any sense.
I think it's,
but when you're in the movie, it's really good. Then you're like, no, that could never happen. Doesn't make any sense.
You know, there's actually a phenomenon, they call it transportation. So how fictional narrative can transport you into sort of another world. And one of the things that's really striking about it is that we don't really fact check when we're in that world. But then what happens sometimes is you go home and you start fact checking it and you go, wait.
Yeah. So do you enjoy anything? Because you're so smart, you can deconstruct anything. And I'm told I can do it. And I'm like, wow, you're even better at it than me. Like, I'll watch something and 5 minutes in, I'm like, well, no, this isn't blah, blah, blah. This is why it's not good. But you can deconstruct anything. It's brilliant.
I mean, you know, I have to tell you is that
women hate you on a date, right? They're like, would you just shut up? Stop teaching me.
You know where it's I can do it in movies pretty well. I mean, it has to be a pretty solid story. Like if it's big holes, I'm just like, oh, come on. Or I'll try to predict what's going to happen or something like that. Whereas at its worst is watching stand-up comedy.
Yeah, when you can see where a comic's going.
I mean, I can appreciate the craft, but in terms of really just letting myself be in it, it's become hard.
Well, because if they're not good, or if you see it coming, you get how they fool the crowd.
Yeah.
There are famous comics who are super rich. And like, yeah, I get it, but they're just fooling the crowd. There's nothing special about what they're doing. Yeah, and sometimes it's personality sells it.
Yeah, and look, the crowd's laughing, so these people are funny. I know it's not them, it's not the crowd. It's just that I now...
You know how it works.
Yeah, now I'm just a little too analytical.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Alonzo, thanks so much for doing this.
This was great. You know the other thing I love?
What's that?
The openers in the middle can't come in the green room. Like, they have to wait because I'm the headliner and it's my space.
I know, I feel a little bad about that.
And they keep opening. Fuck them. Let them earn theirs. They're fucking rookies. I don't give a shit.
Well, I appreciate you.
I will tell them how much better than them I am. Like, do you even have a resume? Okay? So, yeah, don't worry about that.
Okay. Thanks so much, Alonzo.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to visit petermcgraw.org for more information about our guests, show notes, and social media links. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share with others. Join Dr. Peter McGraw next week for another fun, fascinating